Joining me now via Skype from Ottawa is our national parliamentary reporter, Ray Filion. Ray, this would be our last conversation for a while until after the holidays. Now, when is Parliament back in session?
At the end of January, they adjourned this week for 6 weeks. The last day was supposed to be Friday, but they decided altogether, as they always do, or very often do, to leave a couple of days early. So I'm talking to you live tonight from a very empty, very cavernous hall of the House of Commons, the House of Commons foyer. There's nobody here. All the MPs have already left.
But you got a beautiful Christmas tree to keep you company right behind you there, so that's kind of nice.
Absolutely. Gorgeous.
Let's chat about those recent by-election results. The federal Conservatives retained one seat in Saskatchewan, but lost another in BC. Trudeau says, hey, his message is resonating with Canadians. Now, is that a big reason why the Grits took 3 out of 4 seats?
Well, it looks to me like Justin Trudeau, in spite of all the issues that his government has had this past fall seasons, and there have been many controversies. Hal, you and I have talked about those often on this show over the last few weeks and months. But in spite of it all, the Trudeau Liberals remain a force to be contend with. As you said, they scored a historic win on Monday night in a by-election in British Columbia in the riding of South Surrey White Rock. Now, this is a riding that the Liberals, the federal Liberals, hadn't won in 70 years, believe it or not. They pulled an upset. They beat the Conservatives. The NDP vote was down to 5%. Things aren't going well for the New Democrats right now. The New Democrats didn't do well also in Lloydminster, in Battleford's Lloydminster. That's a riding in Saskatchewan. The Conservatives were able to hold on to that one. But the fact that the NDP vote is so low right now, they're so low in polls, that's spelling bad news for the Conservatives, because the Tories, as you know, they're counting on the New Democrats to split the vote on the left if they're hoping to beat Justin Trudeau in the next election in 2019. And it's not looking good right now for Mr. Singh's New Democrats.
Now, every time we talked about hot water, it was always Bill Morneau's name was attached to that statement, right? But Kent Hare found himself in a little hot water. Tell me a bit about that.
Again this week, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the story comes from Nova Scotia, a woman from Nova Scotia whose husband used to be in the military. He's a veteran from the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. He's struggling with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, she says when she met with Kent Hare not too long ago, I mean, a few months ago, back when he was Veterans Affairs Minister, she says he told her, look, your husband, you chose to marry him. He's your issue. Deal with him. This is a remark that surprised a lot of people, but the minister, who's now the minister responsible for people with disabilities, denies making that remark. We talked about him on your show last week. Minister Hare insulted people, survivors of thalidomide a few months ago. Right. He apparently told them everybody's got a sub-story. He also reportedly insulted a woman who had gone to see him because of some maternity leave tax credits or something that she wasn't getting. She went to see him as her MP. He apparently insulted her. So he's found himself in hot water a lot over the past couple of weeks, Minister Hare. And there's people on the opposition benches who are calling on the Prime Minister to have him removed altogether from cabinet.
Maybe somebody needs a little sensitivity training, it sounds like, you know.
Probably, yeah.
Now, we've chatted a bit about the excise tax on cannabis divided with the provinces getting 75%, the federal government 25%. But Ray, what about the municipalities? I'm hearing from them right now, they're saying, we're the ones having to enforce the bylaws, the policing. Give us the cash, you know?
They want a third of the money. We're talking about a federal excise tax, which should be able to raise roughly $400 million a year for the first 2 years, according to federal government officials. And, municipalities, quite rightly so, want their share of the pie. They say they deserve roughly a third of the cash for the services that they're going to have to offer once cannabis becomes legal as of next summer, if all goes according to the plans. And the federal government agrees with that. It's agreed to give more money to provinces this week. You'll recall that back in October, when the Prime Minister unveiled this excise tax proposal, his proposal was to split the revenues evenly, 50% to the provinces, the other half to the federal government. Obviously, provinces were up in arms. They said it didn't make any sense because they're going to be bearing the brunt of the cost for that federal government policy. So now we had an agreement on Monday. Now the thing is about the municipalities is that they're not going to get the cash directly from Ottawa. They're going to get it from the respective province. So they're going to have to negotiate with their provincial governments to get their share of the government revenues.
That'll be a big challenge for a lot of municipalities, absolutely.
Yep.
Richard Wagner is appointed Canada's new Chief Justice. I've heard his name also pronounced like the European way, Mr. Wagner. But what do we know about Mr. Wagner so far, Ray?
He's a Quebecer, and as you know, Hal, we've talked about this. The Prime Minister was under a lot of pressure to appoint somebody from Quebec because there's an unwritten rule at the Supreme Court that you're supposed to alternate between a judge from Quebec who's trained in civil law and somebody from the rest of Canada who's trained in common law. So Mr. Wagner was appointed by Prime Minister Trudeau on Tuesday morning to be the next Supreme Court Chief Justice. He's going to be replacing Beverly McLaughlin, who's retiring on Friday after 17 years on the job. And Mr. Wagner is going to be there for quite some time because he's only 60 years of age. So, he's only going to reach the mandatory retirement age of 75 in 15 years. He's going to be around for a while. But most critics, most observers say he's the right choice. He's a very respected justice. He comes from Quebec. Most of them are saying that the Prime Minister made the right choice. Interestingly enough, he was appointed to the Supreme Court of Canada back in 2012 by a Conservative Prime Minister, by Stephen Harper, and now it's Justin Trudeau, a Liberal Prime Minister, who's elevating him to the job of the very prestigious job, by the way, of Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada. He's going to be a major player on the federal scene for the coming years.
Now, speaking of appointments, Mario Dion is the next Ethics Commissioner who's replacing Mary Dawson next month. What can you tell me about Monsieur Dion?
He's another Quebecer. He hails from Montreal. He's a lawyer. He is a board member of the Immigration and Refugee Board. A few years ago, he was the man responsible for. He was a watchdog. His job was basically to protect government whistleblowers. He was appointed this week as the replacement to Mary Dawson, who's set to retire on January the 8th. After many years on the job, her term was extended twice by the current Prime Minister. And the interesting thing is that, as you know, Hal, Mary Dawson has been investigating for a few weeks now on the Prime Minister following his controversial trip to the Aga Khan's private island earlier in 2017. She's also been investigating Minister Morneau, the finance minister, over ethics, the allegations that he placed himself in a conflict of interest situation for tabling a bill last year, C-27, that dealt with pension plans, while at the same time owning shares in the family company Morneau Chappelle, which interestingly enough deals with pension plans. Opposition parties are saying he placed himself in a situation of conflict of interest. Anyway, the thing is, with the appointment of a new commissioner, we don't know what's going to happen with those two probes. It's going to be up to Mr. Dion to make the call as to whether or not he will go ahead and pursue those investigations. Now, what I'm wishing for, I hope that the new commissioner, the new ethics commissioner, works faster than Mary Dawson, who on average takes about 2 years to make a decision in a case.
Wow.
That's too long in my view.
Yeah, no kidding, absolutely. Federal Finance Minister Bill Morneau is announcing some more tweaks to his fiscal reform. What are some of those tweaks going to look like, Ray?
Well, he dealt most specifically with the issue of income sprinkling. When you have the owner of a private corporation who shares his salary with members of his family in order to save on tax at the end of the year. Now, when that proposal to scrap that possibility for business people was introduced last summer, it sparked a huge uproar. The minister is not budging. It's still going to be illegal to do that as of January 1st, but with exceptions. For example, you're going to be able to share your revenues with a person who's at least 18 years of age, who has worked at least 20 hours a week on average in the past week in the family business. So there will be exceptions. By and large, the business community seems pleased with Mr. Morneau's decision to go a little softer on businesses with this particular program, but they're saying they're upset because the new measures will take effect in 2.5 weeks from now on January 1st, and they're saying that this is not enough time for them to get ready for the changes.
Now, last time we chatted about Prime Minister Justin Trudeau traveling for the Christmas season, he got into a little bit of hot water visiting a buddy of his on an island. We all remember that story. But apparently this time around, he's going to stay fairly close to home.
Yeah, he went to the Aga Khan's private island. I was mentioning that a few minutes ago. He's under investigation by the ethics commissioner. This time around, the prime minister's office are telling us that the prime minister won't go anywhere this holiday season. He's going to be spending time with family and friends at Harrington Lake, not too far from Ottawa, which is the summer retreat, the prime minister's official residence in the summer. It's a cottage by Meech Lake. And he's also going to go in the Canadian Rockies for some skiing or snowboarding, but he's not going abroad. Nothing controversial in terms of travels for the Prime Minister this holiday season.
You know, it's funny, I had a chance to go swimming in Meech Lake a few summers ago, and they were saying, just up there is the Prime Minister's
lake.
cabin. You know, it's a gorgeous
right.
lake. It's beautiful there. The NHL Heritage Classic is coming up December 17th at the weekend in Ottawa. Your Senators taking on Le Habitant, the Montreal Canadiens. It's always a fun time for the fans and players playing our national pastime outdoors, Ray.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be the very first time that the Heritage Classic is held in the nation's capital. Obviously, it's taking place here this year, not only because it's the 150th anniversary of Confederation, but it's also a game to mark the 100th anniversary of the NHL's first game between those same Ottawa Senators and Montreal Canadiens. Not quite the same Ottawa Senators, because we know there was no NHL hockey here in the nation's capital for about 60 years. But it should be a fun event. I hope the weather is not going to be as cold as it is tonight. It's minus 25 outside with a wind chill.
Wow.
It's supposed to warm up a bit for Saturday night, but it should be an interesting event at Lansdowne Park, TD Place. 30,000 people are supposed to be there. And obviously, there's going to be an alumni game featuring many former players of the Ottawa Senators on Parliament Hill on that beautiful but costly rink, $5.6 million, let me remind you.
So Daniel Alfredson, we could probably look forward to seeing him as well. Now, speaking of your Senators, I heard that your superstar defenseman, Erik Carlson, may be on the trading block. Aren't they asking him about teams he might be traded to?
Yeah, there's all kinds of rumors. You know, the Ottawa Senators aren't winning many games. They won a game last night against the New York Rangers in Ottawa. It was their first game, their first win in 6 games. And as you know, when things don't go well for a hockey team, rumors start floating about, star players being traded. But I don't think Mr. Carlson's going to go anywhere. I'd certainly be very disappointed. He's one of the best defensemen in the NHL. It'd be a crime to trade him.
Well, there's also talk about the Senators maybe going somewhere, and even the Calgary Flames, the team that I like to cheer for, possibly going to Houston. Yeah. Eric Francis with the Calgary Suns trying to stir up the pot a little bit, but we'll save that conversation for another time.
I hope not.
Our national parliamentary reporter, Ray Filion, joining me from Ottawa. Joyeux Noël and Merry Christmas, Ray.
Same to you, my friend. Take care.